Creepy, creepy, Hello and welcome to Dead Creepy podcast, brought to you from South Wales, UK. My name is Claire Barrand and I'm your host. And with me I have my sister and co-host Linzi Smith. And this week we are very, very happy to be able to welcome to our show special guest, paranormal explorer, international lecturer and author Greg LAWSON M.E.d. Greg LAWSON is a 30-year law enforcement officer, professional investigator, police academy and collegiate educator, and former expert witness for the state in reference to investigative procedures. He also researches and investigates human paranormal experience and locations known for spiritual or unusual activity. He has authored 2 books on the subject and specialises in providing alternative perspectives to explain human experience. Greg, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I really I appreciate the opportunity.
It's great to talk to you.
The craziness that's going on in my life right now, as far as work and everything, has really got me kind of sleepy. Yeah, got up very late today.
So you've been working through the night, I take it?
I have. Yes, I have.
So why don't we start right at the very beginning then and just tell us, we read your bio out at the beginning, and I'd just love to know how you actually got into the paranormal.
By complete accident, yeah. So I guess I was always kind of a little bit of a creepy kid. I always kind of liked scary stuff. And when I was about 5 years old, here in the United States, we had 3 TV channels, and that's all we had. And one night they were having Frankenstein on, the original Frankenstein movie, and I wanted to watch it. My mother, of course, wasn't going to let a 5-year-old watch that, and of course I threw a fit. And she said, "Oh, okay, you want to watch Frankenstein? Okay." So she sets me in front of the TV and gets some popcorn and gets some sort of soda. I think it was a Orange Crush soda. And I get to watch Frankenstein, and that pretty much changed my life forever. I went to sleep that night and had nightmares, and the blonde-haired lady was coming to get me. I don't know who the blonde-haired lady was, but anyway, she was coming to get me, and I got up that night, and I had to go to the bathroom because I guess I drank too much soda, and I got out of my bed, and that's when I had the experience of the hands coming out from under the bed grabbing my ankles.
Oh, no.
Took off running. Yeah, and I don't know whether that was I'm assuming that was a dream, but it's awful interesting on how widespread that phenomenon is, because it's not just one person having that sort of experience or that sort of dream. It's kind of common.
Yeah.
A lot of kids have that, where the hands come out from under the bed or under the couch or under the chair or whatever. And so I ran into the living room, and it happened in the living room. I ran back in my bed and jumped in bed, and I don't remember what happened after that. But that kind of led to me being more interested in the creepy paranormal kind of stuff. And so I was kind of an amateur ghost hunter, I guess, all through my teens, mainly going to cemeteries and stuff, and scaring each other and drinking beer and running around and being stupid. But we did that sort of stuff. And when I went out of high school, I went into the Army, and I traveled quite a bit. And whenever I was overseas, if I could get away from whatever it was I was doing and go off on my own, I would typically try to go to, some of the more interesting locations, paranormal locations or religious locations and things like that. So I got to go to some places in Central America, some places up in Alaska, some places in the Middle East when I was with the Army. Yeah. And and so, there's that. And then as far as answering your question on how I got into it now,
Yeah.
A few years ago, I wrote a book called Zombie Advocacy, and um, and I thought the reason I did it is because the zombie situation, the zombie problem, was so prolific. It's so popular. You got all these TV shows and movies and everything, and everybody is just basically shooting them in the head and taking their stuff. And in the United States, it doesn't matter whether you're dead or alive, you're still a United States citizen and you have the same rights as a live person. A dead person has the same rights. So you can't just go up and shoot a zombie in the head and take their stuff. That's theft. You can't.
Yeah, it's not good, is it?
No. And so I wrote this book, and I thought, hey, this will be counterculture,
Yeah.
And people will really dig this. Yeah, and I sold like 6 copies. Nobody cared. Everybody still wants to shoot in the head, right?
Oh, no.
Well, about 2 years go by, and then I get a call from a group down in New Orleans, and they want me to talk to them about zombies. And then I get a call again from another convention. Hey, can you come talk to us about zombies? So I started doing the zombie lecture tour. And that led into what I was seeing as professional paranormal investigators. And as a career law enforcement officer, as a detective, as a former homicide detective, as a supervisor for investigations, I see where a lot of the paranormal investigators really make very elementary and fundamental errors on their investigation. Of course, they don't want me to point that out, and they don't want to hear it.
Right.
But the are trying to learn, I see, they seem to be receptive to it. So I wrote the book, Detecting Paranormal.
Yes.
And I've had pretty good response on that so far. And I've had some arguments, and the arguments are very well founded from the investigators that have said that some of the things that I suggested are not how it in paranormal. Yeah, because I'm kind of a scientific materialist. If I'm going to do an investigation, I'm going to have stages of how I do it. I'm going to pay attention to not. Doing an investigation, let's say at a location, let's say it's a house, it's a 3-bedroom house, it's 2 stories, it has electricity in the house, and if you're going to go in and try to do, use your K2 meter, well, your K2 meter is going to be going off everywhere because electric wires all through the house. It just doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
So, my theory is if I was going to do that, I would send a medium in before I would ever even go in the house, because in theory I'd be trying to not disrupt the electromagnetic spectrum and let them go in there and then slowly start moving more electronic equipment in there, because wherever you have electronic equipment, you're going to have, electromagnetic phenomenon disruption.
Yes.
And with a K2 meter, you don't even know what you're measuring. You don't have a clue of what is causing this usually.
That's quite right. No, that's quite right.
And it's just theory. You're going in, it's just theory. So anyway, those are the things that I pointed out, and I've had, some Frank Sinelli was one that we talked at length. And, his idea is he wants everybody in there. He wants everybody sitting, having a good time talking. And he believes that, by doing that in a location where there's a reported phenomenon, that would actually fuel any kind of interaction that an entity or whatever may have, as opposed to just a passive setting up cameras and listening devices the way I would do it and sit and monitor. So there's all these different theories.
Absolutely.
And I have bought your book, Greg, in The Paranormal Detective, and
I'm sorry.
Don't apologise. Don't apologise. There's an absolutely fantastic story right in the beginning of the book. I wonder if you would mind telling us. It's about one of your very early investigations, ghost hunting, as you said, when you were young, and I guess one of the very important reasons why you decided that investigations need to be approached with a little bit more intelligence and insight. Not just to take everything as paranormal on face value as well. And I think you were in a chapel. Do you know the story that I mean?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a little bit more intelligence or a little less alcohol. One of the two.
Oh.
Yeah. So I kind of grew up until I was about 12 years old in the Austin, Texas area, and my father bought a business about 60 miles east of there in a town called Rockdale. And Rockdale is really boring town, but it's kind of got like a little interesting history behind it. And there's a large company that operates out of there, or did operate out of there, called Alcoa. And Alcoa had a couple of different companies that supported it, and one of it was a lignite mining industry. And so there's a huge strip mine that they get a low-grade coal out of the ground over there, and they run a coal-fired generating facility for electricity. Well, when they do strip mining, as you can imagine, it takes huge areas to do that. They don't just go down the ground. I mean, they're stripping the top of the soil off everything. And so there was a little community out in that area called Pleasant Hill. And that community pretty much got wiped out by the coal mining industry. But there's a chapel, a school, and a little graveyard that they kind of did the strip mine around that. So it's really bizarre. You drive out there, and there's only kind of one way to get in and out of there. And these big hills, these, man-made hills from the strip mine are all around this little cemetery and chapel. And so and this is from the late 1800s, early 1900s, which is ancient for Texas, but you guys just snicker over there going, yeah, that was like yesterday for us. But, for here in Texas, like, man, that's old stuff, Yeah. So we went over there on a Halloween night, me and 3 other buddies, and we jimmied the lock on the side of the chapel door. And this chapel, of course, is closed down. It's not used anymore, but it's in fairly decent shape. And so we went in there. We decided we were going to spend Halloween night there in the graveyard at the chapel. And so we went in there, and throughout that night, we were drinking Mickey's malt liquor. I don't know. Do y'all have that over there?
No, I don't think so. Sounds good, though.
Well, I like it because I was weaned on it, maybe. But yeah, so it's most beer drinkers think it's pretty rough. And we're hanging out, doing this, and one of our friends brought the Necronomicon with us or something. I don't know. He had some sort of he had some sort of Book of the Dead or something. And he's reading.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and so throughout the night, one guy passes out, and then the other guy passes out. And it's just me and one other sitting there smoking cigarettes and drinking Mickey's malt liquor and reading out of the Satanic Bible or whatever it was.
Sacrilege.
Oh no.
I don't know. I don't think it was the Satanic Bible, but anyway, it was scary. And so we're doing that, and the whole church just altered. It just shifted, kind of moved. And, him and I stopped. I was like, what was that? I don't know. And then the whole church creaked again, and it just kind of moved, because it's a big wooden structure, and it's old. And it just kind of moved, and then there's dust coming down from the rafters in the ceiling, and it moved again, and it's just this big creaking noise, And I was looking at the wall, and I could see the wall bend. And I thought, man,
God.
what's in the Mickey's malt liquor? You know, I didn't know.
Yeah.
It's not. It's good, but it's not that good.
Yeah, this, things are kicking off here.
So I'm telling Joe to stop reading, man. Stop reading out of the Necronomicon or whatever it was. And so it did it again, and Joe's freaking out, and we're trying to wake up our other buddies, and they're like, they're not having any of it. And so I ended up getting up, and Joe's like, no, don't go over there. But I had to go and see what was going on, because I couldn't see anything inside the church that was making the church move and groan like that. So it had to have been something from outside the church. So I go over to the side door, and I'm slowly opening the door and trying to look out. Well, we had like flashlights on the inside. It was pitch black outside. So my eyes are having to adjust to what's going on outside. I kind of see those big, dark, looming hills from the strip mines there, and, clouds, and I guess there was probably a moon, maybe, I don't know, but it was very diffused outside. I'm slowly trying to get my head around the edge of the door to look to see what it is. And as my eyes were adjusting, I see this big thing outside the church.
Oh my God.
And I can't, it's big.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And I'm trying to figure out what in the world this is. And as my eyes are adjusting more, the church starts creaking again, and my eyes adjust more, and I'm kind of getting a better look at it. And it was the biggest cow I think I've ever seen, and he's rubbing his butt up beside the church, just scratching. So that was my first paranormal investigation right there, and that kind of set the tone on what I might make.
But were you relieved to find out that it wasn't paranormal, or were you a bit disappointed?
I was completely deflated. I was ready to get sucked up into the fourth dimension or whatever. And I was all ready. Let's go, aliens, take me away or something. Yeah, nothing happened.
And it was just a cow.
It was a cow.
Oh.
It was a demon cow. I'm pretty sure it was an evil cow.
It was having a very satisfying scratch of its butt on
It was a very disrespectful cow. Let's put it that.
Yeah, man, you can't talk, can you? You were inside the church doing what you were doing.
Yeah.
But that kind of, I guess, cemented for you how easy it is to just put everything down to paranormal activity without actually, let's debunk things if we can. So, hence your book.
We can trick ourselves easier than anybody else can trick us. Let's put it that way. And so, that's kind of where my book comes from, is you need to go from what's the most likely thing that happened or is causing this to the unexplained. Because if you arrive at the unexplained, you've probably done a good investigation. Because likely we don't know what is causing whatever it is, whether it's a psychological malady on the experiencer's part, or whether there is an actual spiritual kind of thing, or a religious kind of thing, or dimensional kind of thing, or time shift kind of thing, or whatever it is.
And since using this approach, how often do you arrive at that conclusion that something is paranormal? Do you find it? Has it made you a lot more skeptical overall? Well,
first, I'm going to define my idea of what skepticism is.
Right.
If you are a paranormal investigator and you're not skeptical, you're gullible, and you have true believer syndrome, and you just can't get out of that. You just you ignore any rationale or logical argument, and this is just what it is.
Yeah.
There's a difference between skepticism and a cynicism. A cop is a skeptic. A lawyer is a cynic. It's when you have contempt for something. If somebody talks, oh, you're a ghost investigator, and rolls their eyes,
Yeah.
well, that is a cynic.
Right.
If you're a skeptic, you'll have the conversation. You'll go, okay, so let me get this straight. You believe in ghosts. Okay, explain to me how do you believe, and so they'll at least have the conversation, and not be, degrading about it. So as a 31-year investigator on my side, being paid as a criminal investigator, my job is to be a skeptic. If I'm not a skeptic, then I'm probably not going to close very many cases, because I'm just going to believe whatever the witness or whatever the victim or whatever the suspect is going to tell me. I'm going to write it down and clear the case. I'll be done. But I'm not going to really get down to what it is, because it's amazing how many people lie to you. You get lied to constantly. I'm not sure how many lies I've told y'all so far, but it's probably at least 3.
Well, we're falling for it. We're totally hanging on every word here.
Yeah. So, even if you go into a situation where I've gone into death investigations where there is evidence of tampering, which leads me to further questioning witnesses, and the witnesses are lying to me about the tampering, and it comes down to very simple things like they didn't want to tell me the truth about what happened at the scene because they don't want to get in trouble about something else that they did outside of the death investigation, or they're embarrassed about something. I've had situations where a husband dies, the wife calls 911 and tries to get EMS there. EMS finally gets there, and the person dies, and I get there as an investigator, and I start finding evidence of tampering with the scene. The body's moved, evidence is destroyed, things are thrown in the garbage, all kinds of stuff, and the witness, the wife, is saying, no, I didn't do anything. I did, he came home, he was working out on the treadmill, he fell over, and I called 911, and that's it. Well, come to find out that he was naked, so she put his clothes on before we got there. She had done CPR on him, and she was wearing lipstick, and got lipstick all over his mouth, so she wiped his mouth, cleaned his mouth up real good, and then threw the tissues in the trash. So there's things like this that lead you to believe that maybe there's more to the unattended, medical death because of the evidence contamination.
Right.
And so it's things like that, and people have paranormal experiences, and everybody just goes, "Oh, yeah, those orbs, yeah, that's incredible." Well, I have some pictures of orbs that are just awesome. When I was at Leap Castle there in Ireland, I had hundreds of orbs around me.
Yeah.
Well, it's also one of the most dusty places on the planet.
Yeah.
I've been in the Sinai Desert, and it's not as dusty as the Bloody Chapel in freaking Leap Castle. So, if I would have been using a regular film camera at Leap Castle, I would not have picked up all those artifacts of dust in my digital photo.
Yeah.
So it depends on what medium you're recording out of. There's so many things that you have to look at.
Yeah.
I'm going to shut up now because I can ramble on forever about that.
Oh no, please do. Please do. I mean, one of the things that you've spent many years investigating and debunking, if you like, is the Roswell, of course. What got you first of all into that? Because that's an absolutely fascinating case. I think you must have spent a good 10 years on that.
13
years. Wow.
Yeah. So what got me into that? My wonderful wife Lynn's best friend moved to Roswell to be a teacher, and so Lynn wanted to go visit her, so we went up and visited, and we visited in May of whatever year it was. and they have a Hatch Chili Festival in May.
All
and
right.
I don't know if you guys have Hatch chilies.
We have, yeah, we've got all sorts of very
Okay.
hot. Yeah, we have chili festivals in Devon. I know that much.
Okay, and so the Hatch chilies in New Mexico aren't really hot, but they're these green chilies that have a great taste to them, and they put them on everything. And it's a chili that you can't really like can or freeze or anything, because they're so delicate that when you freeze them and you unfreeze them, they just kind of fall apart. And if you try to put them in a can, they just melt. But they have this really great taste, and the Hatch chilies are great on hamburgers and stuff like that. So we went up there for the Hatch Chili Festival. It's great, and I noticed that there was a UFO conference the following week. And of course, we had to leave, and I told Lynn, next year I want to go to the UFO conference. So we started going to the Roswell UFO conference every year. And I started meeting people and talking to a lot of the main people that investigated or that actually experienced some of it. And so every year I would go, and I'm thinking, man, I need to write something about this. So I started collecting everybody else's work, I guess you might say. I was compiling all this stuff, and I was also... And I was investigating the investigators.
Yeah, because there's a lot of books already. You know, about 30 books been written about it, probably more.
Oh yeah, and I so my idea was I was going to write a book about Roswell. Well, I got to the end point. It's like, well, man, everybody's already written everything about this, and everybody has a different take on it. Now, I have a huge stack of research, sitting here on my desk. And I keep trying to talk myself into writing that book, but the return on investment on it, I don't know how that will work out, because there's just so many books about it, and until they come out with an alien and go, hey, it's the guy, or until they roll out the flying saucer, there's not much more to investigate on this thing. The guys that have done the investigation have done a thorough, incredible, lengthy investigations on it, multiple investigations. And a lot of it is conjecture, a lot of it is fiction. Yeah. People just made things up. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I came from.
Can I just ask, going back to what you were saying about people fixing scenes, and can you smell a lie on people? I mean, we can't.
I'm not good at that.
No.
What I have a sense that they're not being truthful with me.
Right.
Just by the way, and a lot of times I can't explain why that is. There's a book called Blink. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
Okay, there's a book called Blink, and it explains this kind of human phenomenon of people that are very experienced at what they do. So if you're an art collector and you've been doing it for 30 years, you can walk in and the first impression you get on a piece of artwork is usually correct.
Yeah.
And so if you walk in and go, that's not right, well, that piece is probably not an original. Right. And then you do an exhaustive 6-month investigation on it and realize, wow, it is not an original art piece. It's something else. But you can't explain why you knew that when you first saw it. So when I talk to people, I will get that kind of feeling, sort of. But like some scientific materialist and a rationalist, and I go, don't pay attention to that, Greg. Do your investigation. Yeah,
absolutely. You've got to justify your instinct.
But more often than not, am I right in that you're proved right, that your gut feeling was right?
Yes, after a really good investigation. And the thing about it is I've worked with guys that are incredible in interview, and interrogation and cross-examination. I watch them go into an interview room and do a 3-4 hour interview and get confessions and all this stuff, and I'm like, how do those guys do that? Because they do it consistently a lot, and the only thing I figure out is they're sociopaths. They don't care whether you did it or not. They're going to make you confess.
Right.
Yeah.
And they just go in there and they just hammer you and hammer you and hammer you on everything, and they get a confession. And that it's kind of bizarre, and it's amazing to watch, but it's also very disturbing.
Yeah, and that's not the right approach either, I suppose.
Well, that's it. If it's not a genuine confession at the end, then it's not the right method.
Well, and it might be, but the way they got there was just wow. And some things that they would say and do, I would never, think about doing that. But if you have no conscience, then it's,
well, yeah. And if the person was guilty, the end result is satisfactory.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yep, that's right.
Yeah.
So that's kind of, I go more off of clues of how somebody's behaving. So when I'm interviewing them, I'm watching how open they are to the interview. I'm watching eye contact. I'm watching, or I'm listening for their response. I'm listening see if it sounds like they've rehearsed it.
Right.
Watching their body language and all that stuff. So I typically do that, and that will lead me to believe whether this person is trying to be truthful or whether they're trying deceptive.
Right.
And the deception oftentimes can have nothing to do with the actual investigation. It could be something else. They just don't want to tell me about something else that they're either embarrassed about, like the example of the lady giving her husband mouth to mouth and getting lipstick on him and wiping her. She was just embarrassed about that, and she just kept omitting it. And I knew what had happened.
Yeah.
Because she was lying to me about it. That's I gotta figure this out.
Yeah.
And so.
So when it comes to applying that sort of that theory and the way you've been trained to do that kind of thing into your paranormal investigations, why do you think some people would lie about paranormal activity? What are the reasons you've come across? For example, if you've met somebody who's basically they're lying to you about activity and you find this out, what reasons do people lie about that?
Well, there's a whole host of reasons for that. And it's really bizarre because have you ever gone to, do they ever have like the hypnotist shows? When I was a kid, they used to have every once in a while a hypnotist would come through.
Yeah.
And they would put on a little show and they'd pull people out of the audience and hypnotize them. Yeah. And they would have the people do crazy stuff and sing and dance and do stuff like that.
Yeah, it's quite humiliating for the people that they go. They seem to humiliate them. Yeah.
And the funny thing about that is like when that happened in Rockdale, I know multiple people that they did that, and they told me afterwards, no, I was just playing along with them.
Yeah.
Because I really, at that time, I was 12, 13 years old, and I was just amazed. I was like, man, this is great, because I'm interested in the paranormal anyway. And so they were making them do this stuff, and I thought, it's incredible. Well, I talked to one of the girls later, and she's like, no, I was just doing it. It's just fun, just doing it. I'm like, it just sucked the air out of the room. I couldn't. God, really? We're just pretending? What?
Yeah.
So there could be the entertainment value.
Yeah.
There could be the story entertainment value. Just people like telling a good story and around the campfire kind of thing. Also, there could be motivation on money wise. If I walk into a cafe in Roswell New Mexico. And I holler out, "Hey guys, gotta get everybody's attention. I'm an author and I'm writing a book about the UFO crash here at Roswell. Does anybody in here know anything about it? I'd like to put it in my book." Yeah, I'm going to get half the restaurant wanting to tell whatever contrived story they have about Roswell, because they're going to be, listed in this book, and they'll be able to show their friends there in the book, and that sort of thing. Or what you have a lot of in the United States is restaurants and bars and hotels that want to say that they're haunted, because that is an attraction for a lot of people. Is like, hey, this hotel's haunted, let's go stay there.
Yeah.
And so if you can do that, so when somebody is talking to you about paranormal, you have to look at what would their motivation be. Why would they want to share this? And there could be a whole bunch of different reasons for that. So
yeah.
And I guess that's why it perhaps is. You said some people are not quite so enthusiastic about your methods, or has it got you into trouble at all? Have you ever gone into somewhere and said, "I'm really sorry, but you investigate and you get nothing"? Has it got you into trouble in that way, where you just have to stand there and say, "I'm sorry, but it's not haunted here"? I'm sure there's some people that are going to stand there and argue back and say it is, if it's making them a profit, if you like.
Right, and no, I don't. And there's multiple reasons for that, and I always fall back on this because I think it's awesome. So I was doing a book signing with a lady named Fiona Broom, and she is she's a medium, and she does a lot of investigating, and she's written lots of books like The Ghosts of Austin, The Ghosts of Seattle, The Ghosts of, whatever the city is. And she goes to the city and she does a lot of research, and then she writes her book. And we were doing this, and I was talking with her about experience. And I said, I've had a couple of very benign experiences that I can easily explain away. And it's just strange that, I've been to, dozens and dozens and dozens of lots of very interesting sites that other people have had experiences I've never had. And she goes, "You don't know?" And I said, "I don't know what?" She goes, "You really don't know?" And I said, "I don't know what?" She goes, "Your aura. You have a very strong aura, and you're not going to experience anything because you drive spirits and things away from you."
Oh.
And I said, "One more reason I just go to the bar. That's perfect." So I go to the meeting. We get an operations plan going. We decide to go into the castle and set up. Well, y'all go do that. I'm going to be in the bar. When you're done, you can come tell me what happened. That works out for me. So in the investigations that I have been a participant in, I have not experienced any major thing. The last time I had something happen was at Warwick Castle, and we were doing an EVP session down in the dungeon. And the person that was running the EVP session, somebody walked into the room, and he said, "Can you tell me who walked into the room?" And they were using a spirit box, and the spirit box said Duncan. I mean, this whole time, it was just gibberish. Once in a while a word would come out or whatever. And Duncan Dixon had walked into the room.
Whoa.
And I looked down it was Frank Sinelli that was running the thing, and I looked down at his wife, and I said, "Are you recording this?" And she said, "Yes." And Frank, said, "Did you say Duncan?" And it said yes.
Wow.
So, I sit there and as far as anomalous occurrences, I sit there and start running numbers of there's 26 letters in the alphabet. There's there's X amount of seconds in the day. There's this amount of days in the year. What is the odds of Duncan walking in this room and this thing saying Duncan is truly astronomical.
So that would be the sort of thing you're looking for to verify. Yeah.
And there's a saying in homicide investigation is there's no such thing as a coincidence. Yeah. And so there are a lot of coincidences because, I mean, when you look at, let's say you have an experience of a dream premonition. You dreamt that a certain thing was going to happen. And then you don't pay attention to that for 6 months. And 6 months down the line, a similar thing happens to that person or that thing or whatever it was. And it's, it's a miracle. It's amazing. Mm-hmm. Well, when you start doing the numbers on it and you think about, let's say, if you have, 40 dreams a night, you remember 12 of those dreams and you have 1,700 Facebook friends and, the amount of times in a day and how many people that, are going to die that year and blah, blah, blah. You run the numbers and it's like, well, it's not really astronomical. There is a good chance that a person that is going to die in a particular way and it kind of falls in line like that.
Yeah.
But it makes you wonder because, and I think more of this is going to happen the more human beings we're going to have on the planet. And something else that you pointed out as far as just the argument, I did, some people asked me about a particular house. They were doing an investigation on a house, and they couldn't come up with anything. And they asked if I would just kind of look over what they've done. And that is a good group of investigators that will open up their investigative research and allow you to audit them. That's a true group of investigators. The investigators that just, we went in, we saw some orbs, we felt this, and I heard that, and then they don't want to answer any questions. If you have any questions, they might even be offended by your questions, and it's kind of like, that's not true research. You're just messing around. Yeah. So anyway, this group asked me to audit their stuff, and I did. And something, of course, I would do would be to check tax records. So the problem was this house was fairly new. It was less than 20 years old, and the people that were living there were having some sort of disruption in the house and hearing laughing and things were moving. So you look at the tax records and, that's the first house that's ever been built on that land. No one has ever died in that house. There weren't any murders. There's no significant police calls there or ambulance calls there. And there's just nothing particular about this house. Well, you could always say, well, maybe it was a Native American that was here or a caveman that lived on this property that is, died and he's buried, 6 feet underneath this house. He doesn't like your house being, you can always make up something, it's like, well, maybe there's a dinosaur, that was buried here and he's moving stuff around.
Somebody must have died on that patch of land in the last million years.
So I kind of told him, I said, look, I got nothing. I don't know what the deal is. He's like, well, I'm just going to go ahead and tell them that there's nothing to support this. And I said, well, before you do that, let me think about it for a while. So I decided to look at everybody who's ever owned the property. There are 3 owners of the property. One of the owners of the property, the second owner, had moved to Houston with his family. And had a young daughter, that when they moved to Houston, she ended up dying of cancer. And so the answer to the question, which is the house haunted? Why is there giggling and toys and stuff being moved around? And the answer is the girl that used to live there died and returned to the place she was happiest. You know, I mean, you can always form that scenario based on my extended research.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't really prove anything. And that's a theory or a hypothesis that could explain why these things are happening.
Yes.
You know?
And that's, I guess, assuming that every home that has phenomena happening in it, people are assuming it's a ghost that's doing it, or poltergeist. But I also believe there are possibly other entities that we're not even thinking about. But here, where we live in Wales, UK, we have there's still quite a strong belief in the fae or the jinn, or, you know, for whatever word you might want to put on it. But if I lose my keys, or if something goes missing, I always think those blasted fairies have moved. You know, I'm not automatically thinking it's a ghost. So I think there's some phenomenon that could it be put down to the area that they're living in. If you've got legends and folklore around that area,
Sure.
it could be that there literally is nothing that your research is going to give you. It's just something that we can't explain, but it doesn't mean it's not got a paranormal meaning. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, there could be natural reasons why things are happening. You know, there's theories about ley lines all over, you know, the world, and people correlate strange phenomena with ley lines. You know, when you look at quantum theory, and if you ever talk to anybody that is a physicist and says they understand quantum theory, they're wrong. They're probably because we don't. Nobody does yet.
No.
But when you're looking at the very small, and how the very small does not behave the same way the very large does, we're looking at magic. I mean, we really are. At this point, as a human being, the things that we're discovering in quantum theory, the theoretical physicists that are looking at this stuff are saying, I don't know what is happening. I don't know how a synthetic, you know, computer chip in my iPhone works. It's operating off of theory. And so when you have real smart guys like Neil deGrasse Tyson or Stephen Hawking or any of the other physicists that are saying there is something else going on here, the only thing we can fall back to is, as a human being, it's magic. It's what we would define as magic, something that's amazing, that's happening, that we don't understand.
Yeah.
And it could have to do with, you know, dimensions.
Yes.
If the theory of we know that we perceive 3 dimensions, you know, height, width, and depth.
Yeah.
But we also experience time with that.
Yeah.
So to be able to measure all that, you have to throw in time. So time is a 4th dimension.
Yeah.
But all this other stuff that's happening with the experiences of photons and electrons that they're doing in the Large Hadron Collider over in Europe, when you have particles that are existing in 2 places at once, that leads you to believe that there are multiple dimensions that are going on, and these are actual physical evidences that something else is going on, not just a K2 meter hit.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or something's going on here. No, this is actual evidence that a particle can exist in 2 places at once. And of course, you can argue that also, because when you look at that, it's a particle, but when you measure it, it's a wave. So they don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
And we have this idea of dimensionality and geographic or geometric assumptions that things are the way they are. When you think of an atom, right now, when I say the word atom, you have this image of an atom in your head, right?
Yeah.
You got a ball in the center with 3 balls or 4 balls flying around the outside of it, right?
Yeah.
That's what you're.
Yeah.
That's not what an atom is. That is an icon that scientists have drawn to try to help people that don't study what an atom is, to give them an idea of what kind of how it would. It's not like that at all. And so it's those kinds of things. So what you're talking about is natural things that are occurring: multiverse, spiritual, ghosts, demons, angels, the jinn. I mean, the jinn explain. If you fall under the idea of the jinn explains everything.
Yes.
It's one entity that changes shape and does different things and answers all questions. It's always a jinn. If something's moving something in your house, or you see an entity, or there's a orb or whatever, it's a jinn screwing with you because they don't like you.
Well, there's a very strange thing happened to me last week, didn't it, Lindsay? And I've put this down to the jinn, or a fairy of some kind, but this is this interdimensional thing. And this is going to sound crazy, but we discussed it on our show last week, of the disappearing object phenomenon. And I was making sandwiches for my children.
Is this bread again? Wait, hold on.
This is bread again, yeah. there is a link with bread and something strange in my house. Maybe this will explain things, but I was making sandwiches for my children's lunchbox. And I was stood at the counter. I cut the sandwich into 4. It was a Nutella sandwich. Do you have Nutella over there?
We do.
Yay!
Brilliant.
Becoming popular over there.
It was Nutella sandwich. Anyway, 3 pieces went into the sandwich box, but the 4th piece just vanished. It just wasn't there, and I promise, I swear on my life, I did not eat it. And it wasn't my cat, even though he's partial to bread. He wasn't in the room. So we sort of discussed this theory that there's now a Nutella sandwich floating somewhere, or did it land in Australia in somebody's kitchen? Did they find a strange Nutella sandwich? It just seemed to explain things, as you know, and we started to see things that as you're driving along. I don't know if you notice, sometimes there'll be a random shoe at the side of the road, and now Lindsay and I are starting to question, well, where have they come from?
Yeah, has it slipped dimensions?
You have a theory. You might want to,
Have we lost you, Greg?
You need to write that down. You might be onto something. Oh boy.
But it does happen, doesn't it? I mean,
well, at least you have physical evidence on that. You know, it's not like the other stuff where we had nothing.
Yeah.
I wish I'd had a camera set up, but it was just a normal morning, and we've tried debunking it.
And like with quantum theory, when you're watching that thing, the particles behave a different way when you watch them than when you don't watch them. So maybe that was happening with the sandwich.
That's it. They know when you're watching.
Well, so I mean, just taking that theory. I mean, I know we can joke about things that go missing like that, but how about the I don't know if you're familiar with David Paulides' work at all, Greg. Like missing people, the whole phenomenon of missing people, and there's so many theories about that. So there are some cases I've been reading about that just defy logic. How can people just be there 1 minute and not the next, and there's no trace, and dogs, search dogs are brought out, and the dogs lose the scent and they're never seen again. Have you ever come across anything like that in your line of work?
Yes. We've across the nation, you have individuals that are missing, And also across the nation, you have a lot of bodies that show up at morgues that are never identified. So, but the bodies that show up at morgues that are never identified are much less than the ones that are missing. So, when you delve off into that, that's a complete different discipline. There, you have all kinds of human trafficking stuff going on. You have people that want to disappear. You have people that have no family or anything that just disappear into the vibrations of the city and are never seen again. Yeah. So there's a bit of stuff going on with as far as people goes. Anytime that people are involved in anything, you can automatically assume there's some sort of deception going on on someone's part.
Right.
Yeah.
So not with your interest and with your research into UFOs, you wouldn't sort of say that any of those cases could have been attributed to abduction of any kind from aliens?
So, as far as my experience with studying and speaking with people who, so I've studied the Roswell case, and then I have interviewed people that could possibly have something to do with the Roswell case. Yeah. And then I've talked to a lot of people, as a mental health officer, I've talked to a lot of people who have been reported or have reported themselves as being abducted by aliens. Right. And something that I tell people is just because somebody is mentally ill, just because they suffer from, psychosis, delusions, hallucinations, does not mean they haven't been abducted. You have to take it into consideration. Okay, this person most likely, what is the most likely scenario? The most likely scenario is this person is diagnosed as a paranoid schizophrenic, is experiencing psychosis, hallucinations and delusions, and they think that a group of aliens from light years away from Earth came all the way to Earth to abduct them, take them on their spaceship, and probe them. I don't know. Why don't they ever, they need to take Stephen Hawking's and check him out, or Neil deGrasse Tyson, or Carl Sagan, or maybe they did take Carl Sagan. I don't know. He said he died, but he could have gone off with the aliens, I guess. But let's get some of the higher functioning human beings and explore them, as opposed to the redneck out by the train tracks outside of his trailer house, who is a 40-year mental patient. Why are they taking them? So
maybe they know that they're not credible.
That's a great argument on that, because you return them and everybody just shrugs their shoulders and goes, yeah, okay, man.
Exactly.
I got, they say that I got abducted in the spaceship and they probed me and they did all this stuff to me and then sent me back. And the cynic's argument is, yeah, I think that was not a spaceship. I think that was a van, and I think you were down by the river when that happened. Not in a spaceship traveling across the galaxy.
Or here's another theory. They have taken. There have been some very intelligent people that have gone missing but not returned. Like, for example, Jim Gray, the Microsoft boss, he went missing. They've not come back. They've never been found. So the ones that are coming back, have they been returned?
Yeah.
Because they're no,
So I want my money. There was a reason he was standing out in the middle of his field by himself. Yeah, that's another good argument there. Yeah, let's turn to the retailer. I've actually worked some cases of missing individuals, and once again, there's no such thing as a coincidence. When when you're a very high profile, very well paid executive,
Mhm.
and you have a wife and a couple of kids and a very stressful job, and you come into a lot of money through, stock options or whatever, and then you come up missing, and your boat is out on the lake someplace, and you're gone, you're missing, nobody can find you,
Yeah.
and you can't figure out any kind of financial trail to go on.
Mhm.
But the guy that worked in the cubicle next to you is missing his passport. That's all you really need for a most likely scenario.
Yeah.
And I have a couple of them like that
Yeah.
you sit back and go, well, yeah, he could have drowned, I guess,
Yeah.
but he also could have just decided, you know what, this is enough money for me, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And hopefully life insurance will pay off the wife and the kids and everybody, and everything will be good. So
Yeah.
that's the cynic part of me watching behavior on when you're trying to vet either your witness or your victim, trying to figure out, are they really a victim or are they the suspect in a hoax? And so you really have to balance your cynicism with your skepticism in your investigation, and you have to be able to identify the lies of commission or the lies of omission. Are they lying about what they did, or are they hiding what they did from you, thus resulting in a lie of behavior?
Mm-hmm.
And I guess there's only so much police time these cases can be given as well. You know?
And that's a big deal with law enforcement, is not necessarily solving the crime, but managing your caseload.
Yeah.
Because it's not, when you get a case, the cases don't stop coming. You get a case, you start working on it, then there's another case, and then there's another, and another, and another, and another. So to the point where you have to abandon cases that are truly, really difficult and go with the ones that have really good, witnesses and suspects.
Yeah.
Do you get many cases where you think, I just cannot explain this one, I think this one is paranormal?
Are you talking about like on my regular job, or are you?
Yeah, in your law job, yeah.
It comes down to experience or credibility. So let me give you this one. I respond to a lady who is threatening to kill her child.
Right.
And she's going to toss the child off the third floor balcony. There's law enforcement officers there. They secured the scene. I get there as a mental health officer, and as I'm walking up, she looks at me. I'm walking up the stairs outside the apartments. She's on her balcony. She looks at me. Immediately, she turns and hands her baby to somebody else and walks straight over to me, gives me a hug. I hug her, and I just turn and walk with her, walk down. We don't say anything. I put her in the back of my car, and I take her to the state hospital, and I put her in the hospital. Later, I talked to her, and I talked to her just because I was walking through the ward, and she saw me. And she ran over to me. She goes, "Oh, my God, you were an angel." And I'm like, "Hey, how are you doing?" She goes, "No, you were an angel. That's when you walked up, you had wings and you were glowing, so that's why she ended up just not killing her child. She just handed it off to one of the officers, and came straight to me, or thereabouts is what happened. And so it just kind of makes you want. That goes back to my aura thing with Fiona.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe that's what's going on here.
Well, maybe it is. Yeah.
Yeah. And so you talk to somebody like that, and yes, she's diagnosed with a mental illness, but what is our definition of mental illness? And Do you think if an old man saw a burning bush that was talking to him today, you would call the police and get somebody over there, right?
Yeah.
Or, yeah. So, you look at stuff that happened in the Bible, and it's like, whoa, if that happened today, he would be committed. He wouldn't be a prophet. He would be committed. And so it's when you're trying to figure out your experience or credibility and researching credibility, you have to look at so many different factors. And that's what a lot of people don't want to deal with. When they come over to you and they want to tell you about their experience, you have to look at what their motivation is. Are they trying to get people into their hotel, bar, or restaurant? Or are they truly just walking over going, man, something really weird happened to me, and I'd like to tell you about it. Maybe you can make sense of it.
Yeah.
You're looking for what their real motivation is.
That's fascinating. Yeah.
I didn't really answer your question, though, did I? So, there have been times like the one I just said.
Yeah.
Something happened, and I can't explain why it happened.
Right.
I talk to any psychologist, psychiatrist, or rationalist, they're going to say, well, she's mentally ill. She had a delusion, and that's what happened. Well, that was a damn convenient delusion, because she was going to kill her baby, and she was postpartum depression, and coupled with the other diagnosis that she had, made her very dangerous.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden something snapped, and it was different. So
did she recover very quickly after that? Or
I don't know. I saw her about a month later, and that's not part of what we do. We make sure the emergency stops happening right now, and then hopefully the psychologist and psychiatrist will then take over, and the social workers will then work the problem from there.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's rare that we follow up with that sort of thing.
Okay.
But that very easily could have a paranormal explanation, but it's not.
It could. It sounds. I mean, to us being into these things, it sounds a bit like possession, doesn't it? And
Right. And if you were going for the religious argument, that's what that'd be.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, yeah. Yes, there's several assumptions that people could make just on hearing that story, depending on your sort of preferred way of thinking, I guess.
Right. And when you're assessing experience or credibility, you're looking at multiple things. You're looking at personal presumptions with what you just said. If this happened with a group of people that went to a charismatic church that routinely cast out demons, spoke in tongues, and things like that, well, that's their answer. If you go and look at, let's say, somebody who's experiencing orbs all the time, well, you look at physical limitations, and you find out that they actually have cataracts, and that is causing these images that they're seeing, or you look at her in that case where she's suffering postpartum depression, she's got a mental health history, and you look at that, or you look at chemical impairment. I worked one that was in the book. I get called over for multiple demon possession. 3 girls, saying that they're experiencing a possession situation, and they go to a church and they are talking to the priest, and they're all praying and everything, and one thing led to another, and I ended up getting called. And once I got there and I interviewed one of them, I picked the one that had eye contact with me and then quickly looked away, because I knew she had something to hide at that point.
Right.
And so I pulled her aside, and I said, how long have y'all done this? Is this your first time doing meth? And finally he's like, yeah, okay, that's what it is. All right, well, so you have chemical impairment that, one girl has an experience that she shares with the others, the other then identify with that feeling of that experience, and it goes on, and it kind of spreads. And that's a phenomenon with human beings. And then, of course, you have the hoaxers
Yeah.
that are actively just trying to maybe screw with you or set something up so that they can have a haunted house or whatever. And then bottom line is eyewitness credibility, because we're learning more and more in law enforcement that what we thought was great evidence as far as testimonial evidence of eyewitness credibility, we're finding is very flawed.
Yeah.
So if you don't have, we had a case here in Austin of a triple homicide, or quadruple homicide, and during the investigation, over 40 people admitted to doing it.
Really?
Well, yeah. Why would 40 people come up and say, "Hey, I'm the one that killed those girls"?
Like a notoriety thing, I guess. Is
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, because it was all in the newspaper. It was crazy. It's just amazing newspaper coverage and news coverage, and they just wanted to be a part of it.
You've just been listening to part 1 of our exclusive interview with the paranormal detective Greg Lawson. Tune in next week to hear part 2. Thank you for listening to Dead Creepy Podcast.